I am 22 years old female. My companion is Greg, who is 25 and a man. His mother, Lisa, in her 70s, witnessed our acquaintance. We recently attended the funeral of a relative of Greg and Lisa's together. After the farewell ceremony, the participants gathered in the hall where conversation intermingled with a light dinner. At this point, Lisa decided to go outside for a smoke. Through the open window of the church, I noticed her settled in the back seat of the car, lighting a cigarette. Her hands busied themselves searching through the large bag I had brought with me, filled with various necessities, including lighters. It seemed to me that one of them was the one she was reaching for. I went back to socializing and supporting Greg, forgetting at that moment one important detail: my wallet remained in the same bag. 2 days later, while stopping at a gas station, I discovered my card was missing from my wallet when I was about to pay for fuel. The situation was saved by using Apple Pay, after which I headed home to begin my search. I contacted Greg, who was at his parents' house at the time. I asked him to see if I could have accidentally dropped the card there. I usually only take the card out of my wallet when I need it, after which I immediately put it back. However, I thought, perhaps in the process of shifting things around in my wallet, I could have accidentally pulled it out and forgotten to put it back in. Not having found the card or heard from Greg about its whereabouts, I decided to wait another day before blocking it, hoping that it might pop up. I also checked the banking app for unauthorized transactions, but found none. The next day, Greg informed me that he found my card on the washing machine. He couldn't understand how I hadn't noticed it there before. I thanked him and told him I would pick up the card in a couple days when he returned to our shared apartment. When payday came, I checked my bank account and saw that in addition to the receipt of funds, there was a $350 Amazon order that I hadn't agreed to. Upon contacting Greg to ask if he had used my account to make the purchase without my knowledge, he adamantly denied it. I immediately canceled the card and reported the possible fraud. It was later discovered that Lisa had used my card to make the purchase because she could not find her own. She assured me that she would reimburse me shortly and explained that she needed the purchase badly. What exactly was purchased, I do not know, but I was upset by the fact that my card had been used without my consent. Furthermore, her propensity for gambling and embezzlement became known. Lisa had borrowed money from Greg in the past. The divorce from Greg's father was predicated, in part, on the fact that she had embezzled a significant portion of their shared savings during their separation. The amount in question approached $500,000 and was never returned. In light of these circumstances, I decided to go to the police. Lisa reacted violently to this decision. She blasted me with a wave of anger and accusations, claiming that I had acted too harshly and arguing that I could have waited to return the money. Nevertheless, Lisa had developed a reputation for frequently failing to fulfill her financial obligations. I reflected on my decision to blame my boyfriend's mother, calling myself an idiot in remorse. However, it's important to note that Lisa did not biologically become Greg's mother. She and her now ex-husband adopted him as an infant. In this situation, Greg's past issues with Lisa's theft and gambling have not been ignored and supportive of me. Let me highlight moments that unfortunately slipped through the cracks. In moments of grief, she decided to go through your purse, intentionally looking for your bank card. With full awareness and certainty of her actions, she used your card on Amazon's website, making a $350 purchase. Out of principle, in a case like this, I would recommend contacting the police. You are absolutely right in your decision. Further, Greg may inform his mother that her presence in your home is not desired. This creates an unpleasant situation. It would be wise to install security cameras. Not only did she commit the theft, but she tried to shift the blame by making you at fault. No, you did the right thing by contacting the police. Her actions are a violation of the law, and there is a belief that she should be charged. You should not back down in a situation like this. Greg seemed unable to connect the facts, not realizing the immediate loss of the card and not suspecting his mother. Scammers have been known to express outrage when caught in the act. Thieves, especially if they are family members, act even worse. They assume you want to trust them and play on that instinct, which is absolutely despicable. I'm truly sorry about Greg. She stole your card with such coldness and indifference that no doubt this was not her first time. Naturally, she will try to defend herself when caught off guard. Next story. My husband and I traveled to Mexico to spend time with family. I am a United States citizen, but my roots are deeply rooted in Mexican culture because my parents are from there. One day, while celebrating my daughter's birthday, who was only a year old, they gave her earrings. My daughter doesn't have pierced ears yet, so I decided to hold off on this gift until she was older. While we enjoyed meeting up with friends, our daughter was left in the care of my parents. Upon our return, my mom proudly revealed that they had pierced our daughter's ears without our consent. This act caused a storm of emotions. I immediately picked up my daughter and my husband and I left my parents' home, trying to calm them down to avoid conflict. Upon arrival at the hotel, my husband, unable to contain his anger, stated that my parents were no longer trusted to spend time alone with our daughter. I expressed my determination not to bring our daughter or any future children to meet my parents. As a result of this decision, we left 3 days earlier than planned. During our return to the States, my parents tried to contact me, but I chose not to respond to their calls and texts until we were fully home. After a few days of trying to sort out my emotions and process when it happened, I finally decided to talk to my parents. I started by asking them to let me speak my mind to the end without interruptions. I then explained that my husband and I were deeply upset by their decision to pierce our daughter's ears without our consent. I also informed them that we had decided to stop visiting them for a while because of this incident. In response to my words, my parents reminded me that both my sister and I had had our ears pierced as infants, which they felt was not harmful to us. Despite their arguments, I emphasized that our decision was final and non-negotiable. In response, they asked other relatives, including my grandmother, to contact me and convince me that my behavior seemed ridiculous. After a serious conversation between my husband and I, we came to an agreement. We decided to resume seeing my parents, but on the condition that they also agree to pierce their noses as a symbol of understanding. However, when we proposed this condition, my parents reacted with incomprehension, saying that our demand did not seem serious to them and they had no intention of fulfilling it. I took their refusal calmly and ended the conversation. Next, we were faced with the need to defend our decision against criticism from other relatives. As a result, we decided to limit any attempts to contact us from those who tried to condemn us for limiting my parents' access to their granddaughter. The complexity of the situation increased when we discovered that our daughter's ear piercing had resulted in an infection. The skin around the piercing became flaky and antibiotics were required. This was necessary for her health and well-being, emphasizing the importance of taking care of a child's health. Your message about the ultimatum sounded more like a sneer, like you didn't expect them to actually decide to get a nose piercing. It was more about keeping your distance and not wanting to communicate, given their apparent hesitation to go through with the piercing procedure. The act they committed was wrong on multiple levels. By refusing to admit their mistakes and take responsibility, they have left you with no choice but to stop communicating with them. I support your decision to be adamant about the nose-piercing ultimatum. It is particularly surprising that they found a master willing to perform the procedure without the guardian's consent, which probably happened in Mexico, where the laws may be different from the US regarding tattoos and piercings. In the US, this is only possible if you find someone willing to do it illegally. The situation with the infection of the child's ears shows that the procedure was done poorly. Stay true to your principles. If your parents are choosing to be right instead of being a part of your life, they may not be the best role models for your children. Now, I want to tell a different story. All of my children are well aware that I am willing to pay for their college education under 3 conditions. First, they must demonstrate high scholastic achievement by earning grades of at least B's or A's. Second, they are required to avoid any underage problems at school, including alcohol use and cheating. Third, they must engage in extracurricular activities that will be beneficial to their future resume, such as volunteer work or participation on the school board. I believe that these requirements are quite manageable for those who are serious about their studies. I have also made it clear that if any of these rules are violated, I will not pay for the next semester of their tuition. If the problems continue, I will cut off financial aid completely and they will have to take out student loans. Unfortunately, my freshman daughter was unable to meet these conditions in her first semester, receiving mostly C's, which was totally unacceptable. I informed her that I would not be paying for her second semester and that the decision to resume funding her third semester tuition would depend on her success in her second semester. During spring break, an argument ensued between us over my decision to force her to make a financial commitment. She has called me an idiot, claiming that I am able to pay her tuition, but I stand my ground. I am confused as to whether my decision to continue to not pay for her semester because of past grades is the right one. The expression, "you're an idiot," is an extremely harsh judgment. Controlling the situation of a freshman daughter facing academic failure is highly debatable. The transition to college comes with adjusting to a new life, environment, people, and expectations. The decision to support your child's education is left up to you. However, imposing financial burdens for not meeting specific expectations may seem unnecessarily harsh. It is important to realize that adjusting to a new environment takes time and patience. Instead of strict measures, it is possible to be sympathetic to the difficulties experienced. It may be helpful to discuss with your daughter her impressions of school, academic difficulties, and how well her previous education has prepared her for new academic challenges. She may have had to overcome significant obstacles, including difficulties with academic writing and analysis, for which she was not prepared. Recounting her own college experience, where her first year was marred by struggles to succeed due to a lack of preparation in high school, emphasizes that success can be achieved despite initial setbacks. Graduating with honors in 3 years as an accounting major becomes a powerful argument for supporting and believing in a child's potential. The importance of teaching children to take responsibility for their future is emphasized, while realizing that support and belief in their capabilities can go a long way toward their success and adaptation to new circumstances. You are not being an idiot. I am also a college student and face similar demands from my parents. If you have outlined rules for your children ahead of time, there is no cause for concern. The responsibility for not meeting the set criteria lies with your child, and naturally there are consequences. It is important to stay true to your word. The moment you decide to make concessions or change your decisions can be the turning point when children begin to see it as an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. My next story. I've turned 40 years old. I am a man and the father of a teenager named Joe. Together, we form a family without Joe's mother. Since she left us when Joe was only 4 years old, I have taken on the role of a single parent. This journey has been full of challenges, but I have worked tirelessly to be not only a father to him, but also his best friend. I admit that it was always difficult for me to be strict. However, Joe has rarely forced me to resort to authority. He is the kind of child who has always needed only gentle support and direction. Intelligent, balanced, and caring in his own way, Joe has exhibited these qualities from the very first years we met. Joe has been in a relationship for 2 years with a girl named Emma, who is characterized by her sweet and respectful attitude. Their relationship seemed to have always been harmonious. However, about 2 weeks ago, while spending time together in the living room, they had their first serious argument. Afterward, Emma asked me to drive her home. After hearing what had happened, I asked Joe how he was feeling. He admitted to feeling a little upset and suggested that some time alone with himself might be helpful. After a quiet ride and a thank you from Emma, I returned home. After discussing the situation with Joe, I realized that there had been the usual conflict that sometimes happens in couples. Joe expressed his intention to discuss what had happened with Emma as soon as he could approach the conversation more calmly. 3 days later, Joe informed me that he was expecting a visit from a friend. I replied that I didn't see a problem with that and offered my help if it was needed. Exhausted from the overtime, I briefly fell asleep. Waking up, I heard a woman's voice from downstairs. Came down and saw Joe kissing a stranger. Asking him for help, we headed for the garage. There, closing the door, I asked about the girl. Joe replied that it was just a friend. My question about his relationship with Emma led to an answer that suggested it might make Emma reconsider her behavior. I expressed disappointment, reminding him that his behavior was unacceptable and emphasized the importance of being honest with Emma. Joe didn't seem to take my words seriously and walked away. I ventured to inform Emma's father of what was happening. After Joe spoke to her, Emma ended the relationship. Blaming me for what had happened, Joe refused to accept responsibility for his actions. In response to his unwillingness to admit guilt, I demanded that he pack his things. I insisted on the need to apologize to Emma and take responsibility for his actions until he learned that he had no place in my house. He left for his aunt's house, angry and unwilling to communicate with me. 3 days later, my sister reported that he was still angry and refusing to talk to me. After discussing the situation with a friend, I heard the opinion that perhaps I should have let Joe handle the situation on his own, despite my disapproval of the cheating. This conversation made me reflect on my actions. Your reaction was excessive for that age. A child should not be deprived of their home. As an adolescent, your child has a natural resistance to established norms, and I share the view that the behavior should be discussed with Emma's father and an appropriate punishment determined. However, the choice of punishment remains a difficult issue in parenting. We are all prone to making mistakes, but this is especially true for those who resort to coercion. It is important that your child find refuge elsewhere if the punishment is disproportionate to the act. Such actions can cause misunderstanding, as you should not interfere too actively in your children's teenage conflicts. You are a parent, not their peer. You should not expel your children from the home for problems in their personal lives that do not violate the law. Your behavior may seem immature. It is better to try to resolve the conflict by acknowledging that the reaction was unnecessary and apologize. Next, you can discuss how partners in a relationship should be treated. Including the girl's father in the situation was inappropriate, as this is a matter for your son to deal with, perhaps under your quiet guidance. Overreacting can undermine your son's trust and alienate him from you. It is important not to transfer problems from the past onto him. Thank you all for your realistic assessment of the situation. My son knows exactly my opinion on infidelity, so suggesting he move in with my sister was a mistake. His home is always his sanctuary. I recently spoke to my son on the phone. He apologized for overstepping the boundary I had outlined. In turn, I apologized as well, acknowledging that despite my stance on infidelity, I should not have made him feel that his home could be taken from him. I emphasized that no matter what the circumstances, he would always find support and refuge in our family home. I assured him that I would no longer interfere with his personal relationships, but emphasized that I would not approve of actions contrary to our family values within the confines of our home. We had a long and fruitful conversation that helped us better understand each other's boundaries and roles. My son remains my closest friend, and I can't imagine a better companion for fishing or just long conversations. Regarding his relationship, it turned out that his girlfriend was unaware of his involvement in another relationship. She expressed her displeasure to him for taking advantage of her feelings, to which he apologized to Emma. However, Emma still remains upset, and only time will tell how their relationship will develop further. My son Joe recognizes that what he did was wrong and is clearly worried about the consequences of his actions. A story that really surprised me. First, let's dive into some background details. I get to be a fairly young grandmother. My daughter, Jenny, is raising 2 teenage children. She recently married for the second time, choosing a man whose family also has children. These children are 2 twins, making them my step-grandchildren. Thus, there are 4 children at the center of our story. For convenience and clarity, I will refer to them as biological and step-grandchildren. Even though they have all become part of the same family, the relationship between the biological and step-grandchildren does not go too smoothly. Observing what is happening, it is evident that the parents' attempts to bring them together lead to some difficulties. I have encountered numerous complaints and tried to explain to the parents that forcing the children closer together is not having the desired effect. My words unfortunately went unheeded, and the children continued to spend time together under compulsion. For my part, I have long since instituted the tradition of sewing quilts with my biological grandchildren. Every year for several months, we get together to create something unique. It's an endeavor we enjoy, and it strengthens our relationship. When I announced that I was starting a new project, my biological grandchildren greeted the news with excitement. However, my daughter asked me to include step-grandchildren who had heard about our class and felt left out. I explained that this is a tradition my biological grandchildren and I established long ago, and that changing it would not be such a simple matter. I also expressed my opinion that forcing them into this tradition might not help improve the relationship between the children, especially since step-siblings already have difficulty communicating with each other. My position was met with misunderstanding, and my daughter called me unreasonable. According to my other daughter, this disagreement has led to more arguments in the family. You are not being unreasonable by seeking to preserve certain traditions and memories for your biological grandchildren. There is no obligation to do the same for stepchildren, especially if it is clear that trying to bring them together is not beneficial to all involved. You do not have complete information about how she interacts with them in other situations. There are specific moments that she wants to keep in her story, and she acknowledges having foster siblings. My grandfather, for example, always took the time to have private conversations with me. Remember, every opinion is subjective. To assume one is more correct is to allow for bias. Who are we to say whose opinion is more correct? There is also the question of equality among grandchildren. It is hard to imagine a situation in which we have to tell a child that he or she is not part of the family by blood and is therefore excluded from certain family traditions. In addition, mentioning that you are a young grandmother adds a personal touch to your story, emphasizing the specialness of your situation.